The co-founder of Flare Network just attacked Cardano. He said in this recent tweet, Cardano launched in 2017. Flare launched 6 years after. Ever since, Cardano has been trying and miserably failing to copy our strategy. Cardano has far lower stats across the board in DeFi than Flare, despite having a massive head start and at least at some point a vast treasury. Cardano will not win Bitcoin. Flare will win by creating the unified DeFi layer for FXRP, FBTC, FXLM, RWAs, stables, and the rest. And he shared the DeFi Llama stats for Cardano and Flare, which shows Cardano has a TVL of 131 million, Flare has a TVL of 159 million. Now, Charles has already responded. He said, attacking Cardano to get attention and media is so 2022. You need to update your marketing strategy, maybe do TikTok reaction videos. Before responding to this, let's talk about what triggered this. For those of you guys who don't know what Flare Network is, I'm pretty sure there's a huge number of people who don't know what Flare Network is. Here's a quick explainer. Flare Network is a layer 1 EVM compatible blockchain, and what they excel in is to bring bridged assets from other chains like XRP. Now we know XRP ledger is not meant for programmable money. So you don't exactly have DeFi for XRP on XRP ledger. But of course, XRP holders want more yield on their XRP holdings. So what Flare does is they allow bridging XRP from XRP ledger to Flare network. So you lock up XRP on the XRP ledger, you mint FXRP on Flare network, and then you can use FXRP in lending, borrowing, yield generation, liquidity pools, etc. So basically you can earn yield on it on Flare. And that's basically what they do. Majority of their TVL is not native assets or not their native token. It is basically capital that is bridged from other blockchains, which of course is not the case for Cardano TVL. So basically that's what Flare does. They look for tokens that don't have smart contract functionality on their native blockchain, and they allow those assets to be bridged to Flare network where they can be put into DeFi. And that's what they do. So what triggered this is recently and lately, there has been a lot of talks about bringing Bitcoin towards Cardano's DeFi. We have this Pogon initiative, Pogon project that is upcoming in this very year, and that is basically the Bitcoin focused DeFi project. And also recently Charles Hoskinson said this in one of his interviews.
And what's nice is if you put them together in just the right way, we'll see a larger and larger amount of TVL coming from that side. Same for XRP to Cardano. We have a very strong relationship there, and I'd like to see XRP DeFi onto Cardano, because that's like over $140 billion of value, and they don't have smart contracts.
Right.
So this is what he said. And you have to understand, majority of this Flare's TVL, it relies on FXRP. It relies on XRP that is bridged from XRP ledger to Flare network, and it is put into DeFi. The point is, their TVL relies heavily on XRP being bridged there. And what Cardano is doing and what he talked about is basically bringing that XRP on Cardano, bringing that Bitcoin towards Cardano. And of course, that is, their core business model, and they felt attacked. There's also this integration with the One chain that allowed the RLUSD to be, to move from XRP ledger towards Cardano and so forth. So all of these things were stacking up, and they felt threatened with this, and they had to come out with this thing. I'm not sure what he was trying to achieve here, but I think it is going to backfire because people have started talking about it. Even those who hate or who criticize Cardano, they're like, no, this is wrong. You're looking at one metric here, that is the DeFi TVL, and you're using this one metric to judge the success of an entire blockchain. And even in these metrics, you are somewhat wrong. Cardano was indeed launched in 2017, but you're talking about smart contract functionality. You are talking about DeFi, which did not start until the start of 2022. We had the Alonzo hard fork in September 2021, which brought the Plurus smart contracts onto Cardano. And afterwards, that's when the DeFi started. So the Cardano DeFi didn't start until the start of 2022, and it didn't start in 2017. So there's a 5 years gap there. Cardano was focusing on security, on governance. They were focusing on important core infrastructure of the blockchain. They weren't pushing to get a stronger TVL. So here's a one sentence to explain this. Flare is boasting about their TVL, which is obviously it's bigger than, Cardano. Not too big, but still it's bigger, $159 million. You're boasting about Flare's TVL because that is the only thing that you excel in. But you're mentioning Cardano's lower TVL because that's the only thing Cardano lacks in, and it excels in everything else. When you talk about security, when anyone talks about security, everyone knows Cardano is one of the most secure blockchains. We have 60% of the supply that is staked. Whereas in terms of Flare, which they have a hybrid consensus mechanism, but they do have part of it is proof of stake. But Flare has about 16% of their supply that is staked. So there's 16% here, there's 60% on Cardano. So Cardano has the best security, it has really amazing governance, it has institutional use cases, it has real world use cases, all of which that Flare does not have. Just for the time being, let's hear about some of the real world impact Cardano has created, not just for the average people, but also we're going to talk about for institutions. So Cardano teamed up with the Ethiopian government and they rolled out the Etela Prism, in which they gave out digital identities to 5 million students and 750,000 teachers, because of which they now have tamper-proof grades and qualifications, which are verifiable anywhere. And they provided same digital identities in places like Tanzania, in Kenya, in Nigeria, in South Africa. They're helping with microfinancing where default rates dropped super low. They are giving unbanked people real access to jobs. In India, they gave these digital identities to farmers. They're tokenizing land and crops there. They're taking out the middlemen from there. They are unlocking credit. All of these are amazing and massive real world use cases of Cardano. You don't have anything near that in Flare network. If we talk about institutional use cases, which we have discussed multiple times in previous videos, so we're just going to do a recap of that. Cardano has partnered with governments, with enterprises, with banks. They have provided on-chain audits and attendance tracking. They worked with Grant Thornton with the world's first on-chain financial attestations. I mean, we even have CME futures for ADA, and it is attracting serious institutional money. So Cardano is not just for institution, it is also for retail. So we've seen example of both here. These are all real world use cases, real world impacts that has nothing to do with DeFi TVL. So you're looking at one metric and you're overlooking all of these other impacts that Cardano is doing. And I mean, the market cap, of course, it doesn't look at one metric. It takes a look at the whole blockchain as a whole. And Flare has a market cap of about, I think, 600 million. It is ranked 72. On the other hand, Cardano has a market cap of almost 10 billion. So it is almost 10 to 15 times larger than Flare network. So don't get me wrong. I have talked about Flare network before. I appreciate what these people are doing. I mean, they are providing DeFi for those tokens that don't have native DeFi, which is obviously very amazing, but it's pretty immature to be a co-founder, come out in the open and attack one of the most secure blockchains out there just because it lacks in one thing. You're not pointing out everything else that it excels in. And this is just one part of it. I've talked about it in the previous video. The reason why we have a very low TVL, it is because we are one of the most secure blockchains, because majority of the supply is staked natively. and because we have an amazing liquid native staking. And because it's one of our strengths, it has also proved to be one of our weakness, because people don't want to put their staked ADA into DeFi because then they lose their staking rewards. But as soon as we get a platform like Lido on Ethereum that provides these liquid staking where you can keep your ADA staked while still put that money into DeFi, everything is going to change. So you don't have to come out and attack Cardano if you are competing to get XRP into your DeFi or Bitcoin into your own DeFi. At the end, it will be Bitcoin and XRP holders that will decide which blockchain is the best for them, that provides the best security, the best governance, the most security, because of course they don't want to suffer any losses. So at the end, it will obviously come down to that. Not these conflicts, not these debates. They're not going to decide who gets the capital. Eventually, it will come down to core infrastructure, what each blockchain is able to provide. So that's my response to this tweet. It's always better to, remind ourselves how many amazing things Cardano has done. So I do thank the co-founder of Flare Network, that because of him, it reminded us all the amazing things Cardano has done. And just because it lacks in one thing doesn't mean that we should overlook everything else. But yeah, that's my take on it. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section, and I'll see you guys in the next video shortly. So stay tuned.